So my name's Cody Polston. I'm the author of Haunted Albuquerque. I'm also a ghost hunter. Started the Southwest Ghost Hunters back in 1985. I also started the ghost tours here in Albuquerque down in Old Town back in the year 2000. And because of that gig, we would have people come to us after the tour, and they were telling us about, have you been to that cemetery over on Yale Street? And we're like, no, there's weird stuff going on there. And stories were just bizarre and they're wild. There's a necromancer. There were witches meeting in the crossroads in the cemetery. All these different ghost stories. So like, okay, well, let's investigate and see what's happening. So what we would do is we'd park on the streets and we're just watching the cemetery to see what happens. And the first thing that we noticed is there was a break in the wall over here. And what they were doing is they were jumping the fence, the little low wall on this side, and they're going and using it as a shortcut to get to the apartments. So you have people moving in the cemetery at night, which is going to attract attention and thus create ghost stories. Some of the crazy ones that I heard. So the big monument back here, I don't know which tomb that actually is. The big white one.
That's the Springer Walton Mausoleum.
They call that the talking tomb. Supposedly, if you go knock on the door, somebody will knock back from the inside. It's just an echo. It was something, you can see teenagers freaking people out with their little antics going on here in the cemetery. But the one story that kind of caught my attention was we had someone on the tour and she was telling me she was driving with her kid and they were on the street back here and they were going to a friend's house, first time they'd been there, and they passed it. So they stopped to turn around. But before they did that, they said there were two people dressed in white, a man and a woman, and they were walking in the cemetery. And they noticed them. So they went and they turned around and came back. They're gone. They're like, where did they go? And so they stopped and they're actually looking like, we saw people. Where did they go? Well, we started to replicate it. All right, let's drive down the street, see what we see. What they were seeing were two monuments that were reflected in their headlights, which they thought were people. Because they're moving, it looks like they're moving, and thus you had the ghost story starting because of that. So a lot of this kind of stuff is stuff like that. It's explainable stuff. But still, when I wrote Wicked Albuquerque, I kind of fell in love with the cemetery because a lot of the people that I've written about in that book are buried here. And so I had to include it and some of the ghost stories. And there's a big legend attached to it, but I'm going to leave that for my book, though, because it's the best story.
Who are some of the wicked people buried here?
Kitku was one. Kiku Honda?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We know about her story.
Yep.
It's sad.
I went in and I researched and found everything that happened with her. And I wrote about Lizzie McGrath a lot. And of course she's connected to Lizzie.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the guy's name. This is a bad thing when you're an author and you write so many books. It was the guy who saved the people during the parade. The wagon caught on fire, and I wrote about him because I thought that was something in the history that needed to be mentioned.
John Braden.
Yeah.
He's buried right next to her.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, it's just people like that. And I noticed there's a lot of senators, and of course we have the veterans section here as well. So.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anytime.